In today's video, we shall be building this 1/12 scale miniature 19th century vampire hunters kit. The kit comes with everything which you see inside this box, and should you wish to purchase one of these kits, they're available on my Etsy store, and the link is in the description box below. For me to colour my box, I'm using an alcohol marker in the colour walnut. Now you can use acrylic paints to colour these boxes. I just prefer to use an alcohol marker to lessen the chance of any warping that may occur from the moisture of paint. It also gives you the added benefit of allowing the grain of the wood to show through like it would with a regular stain. And if, like me, you are a messy gluer, pre-staining your wood then eliminates a situation where you can't then stain over glue. Now don't discard of this part right away, because this does hold the information which then correlates with the initials on each individual piece. Now when I build this box, I do like to start with my lid, and it just gives the opportunity for that glue to cure, ready for when we come to set the hinges. So if you have your lid face down, you'll notice where it has some slight etching on the back. So the next piece, which is the back of the lid piece, you want to glue that onto the base of the lid. Now, something for you to keep in mind is always think about those initials. You always want to make sure that you are putting those on the inside of your project. I have done on a couple of occasions, not thought about it, and I put them on the outside. Not the end of the world depending on how deep of a colour you use on your box, but if you do use a lighter colour, which this currently is, then they are really quite noticeable. Next we take the piece marked B, and then we're going to take the front of the box, which is this part which has the aperture for the drawer, and then you're going to glue that on top of the part marked B. Then we can put on our first side, and then we can take the part which is marked SB for shelf base. Now when gluing this into place, you want to glue this on the top side of where the drawer opening is. We can then proceed with our second side piece and our back piece, making sure that the inserts for the hinges of the back piece are facing outwards. To build the drawer, we are going to butt up the part marked DB up to the back of the drawer front. And then we can apply the 3 sides in the same way that we did for the lid, and again making sure that we take note and making the initials on the inside of the drawer. Now that we have the 3 main parts of the box built, we can have a look at the divider. Now the divider is still attached by the tabs, so for those you'll just need to either snap them off or snip them off with some flush cutters, and then just take an emery board just to file away the remaining part of the material. So how this needs to be glued together is you take the part with the two notches and you put your glue on the short side, and then the smallest piece of the three, that then gets glued vertically, and then we then take the opposite end piece and then we glue that flat, and then you should end up with a weird looking T shape. Now that we have our three components put together, we can start to set in the hinges using super glue. I prefer to get my two hinges glued onto the lid first. Once I gave that plenty of time to cure, I then take the body of the box, aligning up the two etched areas before I then glue in the bottom half of the hinge onto the box body. Now the most important thing here is to let the glue cure. You do not want to touch it, just leave it alone, put it aside and let it cure. So once you've gave that glue plenty of time to cure, it is time to have a look to see if you managed to get any glue inside those hinges. On this occasion I was fine. I have however glued quite a few boxes closed. So at this point we can then glue in the divider into the box, and now we can start making some accessories. To make the mallet, we start with the wooden spindle which is supplied in the kit, and we just need to decide on the length that we would like the mallet handle to be. We can then cut it down to size and use an emery board to round off the end. Next, taking our piece of balsa wood, we need to make a hole going through the centre. The balsa wood is soft enough to mold to the tip of the spindle to eliminate the need for any glue. Once this is in place, we can then take it to our box and then decide on the width that we would like for the hammerhead to be. We can then take off the excess and then round off the edges using an emery board. Next, we're going to take the toothpick and create our two stakes. We need to decide on the length that we would like them to be, and then cut them down to size, and then round off the end using an emery board. To save some time on this video, I went ahead and pre-painted the majority of the models for this kit. Now I did use Vallejo game model paints, but honestly you could use any good quality paint. As long as it will stick to the plastic, it will work fine. Once the acrylic paint had dried, I then went over everything with a wash of black acrylic paint just to give the pieces a little bit of age. For the Bible, I coloured that with an alcohol marker, and then for the cross inlay I used a gold metallic paint and a very tiny brush, and then I used a gold acrylic marker to add the lines on the back of the book, and then I used an off-white acrylic paint to create the look of some pages. And for the tin of those blessed bullet rounds, I decided to use a grey alcohol marker. The etching of the words is so tiny that if we were to use a paint, it would instantly fill them. So I went over with a grey marker and then I dry brushed on a metallic paint to make it look like a metal tin. To create the mirror, we first need to take some flush cutters and take away the hoop for the charm. You can then use your emery board to file away any possible sharpness which is left behind. Now this mirror does come in a silver colour, which is absolutely fine, but for me it doesn't fit the aesthetic which I personally am going for, which is more gold. Now I don't have any sizing glue, so I'm taking this Zig two-way glue and I'm just applying it around the outside of the mirror. Once I've done that, I'm going to put it aside and let that dry. Then I'm going to take one of the crosses supplied in the kit and I'm going to apply that same 2 Zig-way glue and then put that aside and allow that to dry. Now turning my attention back to my mallet and stakes, I'm just using an alcohol marker in the colour teak. I'm using that alcohol marker to make it quicker, and obviously it's a little less messy than using acrylic paints. I then coloured the tip of the mallet in a light brown colour, and then I took an acrylic paint in the colour raw sienna and I gave a very light dry brushing to bring out any texture on the handle of the mallet. I then gave the pieces a coat of matte Mod Podge just to seal everything in. Now that my Zig two-way glue has had the chance to dry and go tacky, I'm taking this gold leaf and I'm going to apply it onto the cross. I could not achieve this amount of shine and metallicness from using an acrylic paint. To change the colour of the mirror from silver to gold, I'm using this mica powder, which is meant for resin. I didn't want to use a gold leaf because I don't want the mirror to be shiny. I prefer it in this more antique look to make it look like it is a piece which is maybe tarnished. Now that part's complete, I can attach the glass part into the mirror. So to do that, I'm just using some wood glue, and then I place it into the aperture of the mirror and then allow it some time to cure. Once it is cured, I then take a very fine ball stylus and I run that around the outer or the inner perimeter of the mirror, and then that gives me a raised bevel effect. To attach the grip of the mallet, I like to run a length of glue along the back of the piece, and then I set that aside to dry. Now inside this kit we have these 5 inlay pieces. You could use these as a template should you want to use something like fabric or a clay inside your box, but for me in this video I'm going to use them as the actual inlay themselves. So I go over them with a red acrylic marker, and then I go over with a red acrylic paint. The actual paper itself is plasticky and it has a linen texture, so the paint just eliminates any shine left over. I then take a tan colour marker and make the craft text just that little bit darker. This craft text is what is going to act as the straps that hold all of the pieces inside the box. Now that the glue that we applied to the mallet handle has had adequate time to dry, we can now start to wrap the twine around the handle of the mallet to create that grip. Once this is all in place, I then like to take a lighter and just burn off any of the fuzzies left over. Now that my accessories are complete, I can turn my attention to aging the box. Now I'm using a walnut varnish for this, and one thing to keep in mind is that for the actual sides of the drawer, the lip of the drawer, and the inside aperture where the drawer sits, you do not want to get any paint or varnish in these areas, because that will add an additional thickness that you then will need to sand down later. Now this box is from the 19th century, so if its previous owner or owners, if they were any good at being a vampire slayer, this box would not be in perfect condition. So I like to take an emery board and I take away those perfectly square corners just to give it a age and a look of old wood that has seen some battle. I then take a tool with a sharp squared edge and then I start digging in some scars and some scratches into the wood just to make it look like it's really been used over time. Then to blend those scars in and to give it a slightly different colour, I take some watered down black acrylic paint and then immediately wipe it off with a moist baby wipe. I then give it one final coat of the walnut varnish just to blend everything in and give it a cohesive look. To take this one step further and to give it an added detail, I take this metallic gold paint and I use a very fine paintbrush and I paint inside the inlay of the lid of the box. I then instantly wipe away any excess off with a moist baby wipe. Now it's time to start putting everything together. So to do this, I like to create my layout by placing everything onto my template pieces. Once I know where everything is going to go, I then take a hot glue gun and glue everything into place. Miniatures don't create shadows by themselves, so to create a little bit of shadow and depth to the piece, I'm using some black pastels in all of the areas where I feel it would possibly create a shadow. At the same time, this colour combination of black and red really lends itself to that vampire aesthetic that we were aiming for. To create the leather straps that hold everything together inside the box, I cut some very thin strips of the Craftex material. I then run it through my fingers to loosen up the fibers, and then once it is pliable, I take it over to the part where I want to create the straps for. I then use my tweezers to manipulate it into that shape, and then I use super glue with the fine tip applicator. I add a very small amount of glue, I allow that to cure before moving on to the next area where I would again manipulate it into the shape that I need it to be in. I then cut off any excess material using some precision scissors, and then I repeat this process for all of the items that I want to be held down by leather straps. Then using more black pastel, I go over the areas where I have now put the straps just to create any shadow that they may create. To create the look of the brads that would hold the leather straps down, I'm using this fine tip metallic gold pen. I would recommend you use something like a caviar bead or some half back caviar beads meant for nail art. That is what I typically use to create these, and they do look incredible. However, for this video, I'm only using the materials that I provide within the kit. Now that our displays are complete, we can start gluing everything into place and watch this box come to life. Now that that's in place, I like to take some more black pastels and create a vignette around everything just to give it a little bit more depth and dimension and creepiness. Should you choose to glue your herb bottles in the same position that I did, do take into consideration the profile of the pistol handle. This can ultimately affect how flush your box will close. And with a small dusting of black pastels around the lock, the box is now complete. Again, thank you for spending your time with me. I appreciate it. I wish you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.